things, and we'll start with Keith. And just so you know, as a panelist, I will mention who should go each time, just to try to keep order and make sure that everyone knows who should be speaking, so we don't trip over each other at all. Just in this virtual world, I found that works pretty well. So we'll start with Keith. And the first question that we have is, have you ever changed your career? And if so, why and what were the challenges?
Thanks, Drew. Great to see everyone today. Thanks for inviting me. Yes, I have changed my career. Actually, I had to write it down to make sure I had it all correct, but I've changed careers actually 4 times. In case any of you are wondering, yes, I am out of the membership age category for this group, but I definitely am a supporter of the group and the concept. But I've changed careers 4 times, and why? The reason why is I got to a point in my previous careers where I either felt that it wasn't a very good fit for me, or in one case, I literally was extremely burned out and had to completely redesign my life. So that caused me to do a lot of soul searching and led to where I'm at today, which is by far the most rewarding and just exciting career that I've ever had. And I guess I should mention what I do now is I work for Edward Jones Investments. And so I'm a financial advisor helping people create strategies to save money and build wealth, mostly for retirement, but for other reasons as well. The other careers I've had, in case you're wondering, I started out as an English lit major in college. And so when I got out of school in 1992, there wasn't a lot of jobs in the market at that time. So my first job out of college was a waiter at the Garden Cafe. Luckily, the school that I went to, Morningside College, went ahead and hired me to be a recruiter. So I was a recruiter for several years for them and loved that job. Then I moved into recruiting for First Data Corporation in Omaha for a few years. Also worked at the Principal Financial Group in Des Moines as a recruiter. And then I got into HR management, and then eventually into mortgage loans, selling mortgage loans, and then about 7 years ago to Edward Jones Investments.
Thank you very much, Keith. And one thing that's important to note too is we know that Steve works with you in your office as well right now. So one of the things you also do is you're mentoring someone within the profession, and that's a really admirable thing. So I wanted to make sure we noted that as well.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. The next individual we have for the question is Elizabeth Hunter with Snyder and Associates, and please feel free to expand on an introduction if you would like to as well, Elizabeth. But again, the question is, have you ever changed your career? If so, why? And what were some of the challenges you experienced?
I would say I sort of changed careers. I originally went to college to just be a CAD tech. And I finished college in that, and I worked in that for a couple of years. And then I realized that I didn't want to be the one doing the drawings. I wanted to be the one marking up the drawings. And so I went back to college then to be an engineer. And while there, I was an electrical engineer for one day. And then I changed my major to civil engineering, but also sort of fell in love with environmental stuff and planning. And so I actually have a degree in civil engineering and environmental studies for my bachelor's degrees. And then for my master's degrees, I have civil engineering focused in transportation, although I don't really work in that area of civil engineering at all, but also community and regional planning. So everything I've done has been pretty related to what I do, and has kind of been a stepping stone to get me to where I am. And so, you know, now I'm a civil engineer here at Snyder, and I've worked at a couple other places here in town. But my whole civil engineering career really has been over here. I went to Iowa State, and I've been here since 2000. And so everything I've done has been really in the metro area. So.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And we thank you, Snyder, for being here in the community. You guys do such important work, as well as your other counterparts in civil engineering and just engineering in general. I think we all know the importance of your work as we see a lot of different projects and the roles you guys play throughout the community. So thank you. Next up, we have Arian Haddix with the CB Soccer Club. And once again, the question is, have you changed careers before? If so, why? And what challenges did you face?
Yeah, I think the first time I changed my career, I have to say I was probably 6. I was dead set I was going to be an astronaut, but it turns out I get motion sick. So that didn't last very long as I was planning my career, I guess. But no, I started out with a degree in social sciences, so psychology, sociology. I was going to do something in the human services world. I ended up having kiddos and starting a family early on. And so those jobs were not as easy to come by at that time. You know, we're talking late 90s kind of time frame. And so knew I wanted to stay in the area. So decided to stay in the banking career that I had started when I was in college. And then ultimately became involved in a lot of volunteer work. And working one night with my volunteer work with the American Cancer Society, I looked at my husband and said, wish I could get paid for this. And turns out about a month later, our state director called and my career nonprofit started. I think it was Steve Jobs that said you can't connect those dots looking forward necessarily all the time, but you can going backwards. And it's interesting to see how all of those different opportunities led to the career that I have now. So fortunate to be the executive director of the Council Bluffs Soccer Club. And we manage the Iowa West initiative here of the Iowa West Sportsplex. So kind of a mix of the banking and nonprofit and numbers background along with that social sciences world all kind of met to be where I am now.
Thanks, Arian. And we just had an event with you just within the last month. And I think it was really exciting for folks, even though it was virtual, to get a chance to kind of get a tour and to see this great space that you have there. If you haven't had a chance to get down and check out the Iowa West Sportsplex, it's spectacular. It's probably the best word for it. So do make sure you use the opportunity to get down there and check it out. It's a great amenity for our community, and we thank everyone who made that possible. So Ramon, the question is now to you, and it's, have you ever changed your career? Why, and what were the challenges?
Very good. Well, thank you for the invitation. I'm very excited to be here with all of you, and I get to know you, you get to know me. I'm the executive director at Central Latino of Iowa. We're located in Council Bluffs. And I, like most of the panelists too, my career, I thought I was going to be in the foreign service. That's what I went to school. I got my degree in international relations. I went to Creighton University, but I started, like everybody at Creighton, starting to do something with science and pre-med. That was a course, and during the middle of my college experience, then I always liked, working with different cultures and organizing parties and talking about the U.S. to other places. So when my senior year came about, I interviewed to different agencies and FBI, CIA, Foreign Service. And that year, I guess there was no openings. And that's when I changed my first career. So I became a teacher, as a teacher at Duchesne Academy for a few years. And then I had a call for revocation to be a Jesuit. And at that time when I was in college at Creighton, and then in 92, after 2 years of teaching, then I wanted to be a Jesuit. So I was a Jesuit for almost like 15 years. And in the Jesuits, I was mostly a teacher because I had that call when I was at Duchesne, and I taught at Creighton Prep, and I taught in South America. But I also had experience of project management, and I did a lot of events planning, international events. So I always got connected to my international experience that I always had. Then I led the Jesuits, and again, I guess I got my first paid job after many years in my 30s. And then I got a lot of job offers after I led the Jesuits. And I was between coasts, between New York and Los Angeles. And I chose the Los Angeles job to be executive director. So since then, I've been working as nonprofit director of different social projects. And I started with the homeless. I ran a homeless center in downtown Los Angeles. Then I ran a gang prevention center in the Valley in Los Angeles, and so on. And then I changed my career again, and I went on my own. So I wanted to do consulting because I learned a lot and I want to help other people. And during the time of consulting, since I have free time, I always want to explore my acting career. And I started acting in the LA world, and I became a SAG actor. And if you see me once in a while on some TV shows, that's me, sometimes with a beer, without, etc. And then my partner was a headmaster of a school, a famous school here in Hollywood, and he wanted to move to a different place. And then I said, well, I know a cute little place that I went to college and I worked. And so we decided to move, and that changed not my career, but the placement. So I came back again to the nonprofit world, and that's just where I am now. So So my career, even though I changed job placements, I would say, but they've always been in the areas of education, in the area of nonprofit. So I would say my career didn't change because I was always a social kind of servant or public servant. Right now I'm doing just to make it my life career into thing, I'm doing a program at Harvard University of public leadership. So that's, I'm trying to connect some of the dots or some of the gaps that I had in my experience as an administrator and running social projects and these type of things. So I'm very happy to be here in Council Bluffs and help the Latino community, especially as they grow here in the Southwest area, to bring it more back to and that's what we're working on, work placement and entrepreneurship as well.
Thank you, Ramon. We're certainly glad to have you in the community. It's been great getting to work with you and getting to know you better in the 7 months I've been on the job, and we appreciate all the collaboration and partnerships that you forge not only with our organization, but with others throughout the community as well. So the next question, we'll start with Elizabeth, and it is, what are some leadership skills that you have developed over your career that young professionals should focus on? And again, we'll start with Elizabeth.
Well, I have learned over my years that being, I guess I would used to call it underspoken or meek. You know, being in a male-dominated field, I've always found that to be a leader in the things that I do, I kind of always have had to be outspoken more so to be heard because of the, you know, differences of women dealing with the engineering world and the construction features that come along with what we do. And so I think I used to be more of a brash person in my outspokenness. And so I've learned over the years to kind of tame down my way of communicating to people. You know, really it's all in how you convey your message. You know, there's a million ways to say what you want to say, but spitting it out the right way so that it's heard or understood by the most people. I would say that's the thing that I have learned the most throughout my career is how to talk to people, know who your audience is, and kind of remember to be in their shoes when you're trying to address a question or an issue or give feedback. You know, feedback doesn't always have to be harsh and criticizing. You can come at those kinds of things in a manner that will help somebody grow rather than hurt their feelings kind of stuff. So I think that's probably the most important thing that I've learned really as a leadership skill. Over time through my life, what I have focused on for myself is not wanting to be somebody who is only focused to one topic. And by that, I mean, when I was in engineering school, I didn't just join engineering groups or participate in community service things that were focused to only engineering. The things I like to be involved in have to do with gardening and horticulture and environmental stuff. And so really being interdisciplinary, I think, about your life and your career has helped me a lot to understand people more and how to deal with the wider broad scheme of, you know, people in different groups. So that's my two things.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And up next, same question, we have Arian, and the question again is, what are some leadership skills that you have developed over your career that young professionals should focus on?
Yeah, I found myself nodding along with a lot of what Elizabeth was saying too, a lot of those similar things in maybe not, I guess, a career that there's not a lot of women in. I think we had a conversation a couple weeks ago, and they think right now I'm the only executive director of a soccer club in Iowa. So you have some of those same challenges that you have as being a leader in a different type of environment. I think the biggest one for me, I'm naturally an introverted person. So I think the things that I've learned along the way is to expand your circle, you know, when you're building your team, that if you have ever taken part in the Council Bluffs leadership class, they talk about that strengths-based leadership and knowing where your strengths are and where others are as well to continue to build that team. I think that's one of the things that I've learned the most along the way is it may be easiest to work with people that think a lot like you do, But ultimately, if you're in charge of an organization, bringing in all of that diverse perspectives, I think is a huge benefit to not just continuing your leadership world, but the organizations that you'll be leading. I think that's a huge piece of that. And I think the other one is, I had it told to me one time, is you can be passionate, but you need to be educated when you're passionate. So a lot of us, as you're starting out, you find the things that drive you and the things you're most passionate about, especially in that nonprofit arena. But just because you talk the loudest doesn't mean people are going to listen to you the most. So making sure, like I think what Elizabeth said, of making sure that you come at it with a different perspective, different ways, knowing your audience, but making sure that you continually educate yourself so that when those topics come up and you have the opportunity to be a person at the table, that you have all of your bases covered, and you know there's more education behind the passion than just the noise.
Thank you, Arian. I think we can all identify with that, and I'm glad that you mentioned again some of those key points that that Elizabeth also mentioned, because it's so important to do your research and try to put yourself in other people's shoes as you have conversations with them, and really, like you said, continually educate yourself and always be learning. So thank you. Up next, we have Ramon, and it's the same question. It's, what are some leadership skills that you have developed in your career that young professionals should focus on?
You're on mute.
Yep, you're muted.
This is a new line. I should make a t-shirt. You're on mute and make millions of dollars on my next business. But anyway, so what have I think one of the major skills that I developed in this career has been active listening. Fortunately, I've been working, after the Jesuits, mostly as an administrator, and working with other people and with different background, different gender, everything. So it's a good, like Post Lady said, it's good to listen to the others because you want to create a team wherever you are, or you're part of a team, and you have to work with other people. Unless you're self-employed and you're the only person, you don't have to listen to anybody. But active listening, to your customers or to whoever you are working for, working with, and that's going to bring a lot of also good skills in communication, especially interpersonal, dealing with the other. That's one of the things that I try to do with my employees, that they have good communication, that they listen to one another, that they set goals. It's very good to start setting your goals, and in the way you treat one another with respect, and dignity. Another skill that I've developed has been conflict resolution. That's always, especially in my position, trying to, we say, set the fires off or put the fires down. It's always, I don't want it, but it's part of the career that I have. That those are the things that I to do, and and then a good skill, that is, how do I motivate the other, to do the best they can be and the potential they can be. And like my employees, I did a workshop with them yesterday with the goal setting, as a team, and what motivates them, and what I want them to be happy, when they work with me. And so I don't have to supervise them a lot, and we can make good decisions together. So that's, my leadership skill always been the teamwork, even though I'm maybe the top or the administrator, and I know all the things, the box stuff with me, but I wanted to participate, in the decision making that I do as an administrator. So those are the skills that I recommend to you to start developing through your career.
Thank you, Ramon. And that brings us to Keith. And again, the question is, what are some leadership skills that you have developed over your career that young professionals should focus on or emulate?
Drew, I'm taking notes because these panel answers are so good. I'm going to continue the theme of communication that I've heard, both written and verbal. As an English major, that always is one of the things that comes to the forefront of my mind in a question like this. So whatever young professionals can do to continue to develop their communication skills, I think is very important, no matter what your career is. And you've heard it from nonprofit professionals, you've heard it from an engineering professional, and I would echo that as well. I think also what I would call being gracious and just being a friendly person. We all have a lot of things we're dealing with on a day-to-day basis, and sometimes a minute-by-minute basis. But being present when you're in a group or you're on a Zoom call, just kind of being a person who's engaged and who also connects others. Ask questions. I'm pretty well known for asking a question at any setting that I'm involved in, to somewhat dismay of my coworkers. But I can't help it. I want to be engaged and learn and connect with other people. And I think that's a good skill. I think it's served me well. And the last thing I would just mention is, and if you're taking notes, I would encourage you to write this one down as a young professional. Never, ever, ever burn a bridge. And I say that because I've always been able to go back and connect with past coworkers, past managers. We just have too small of a town, too small of a state, and too small of a country and world to ever burn a bridge with anyone. So be as gracious as possible when you do change careers, or you have to bow out of something if that's necessary. If you're on a committee or something, communicate and be gracious, and people will respect you for it and remember you for it. And I think it's another thing that served me well.
Thanks, Keith. I think that last one really resonates with me. That's one thing I tell people all the time. I say, no matter what someone does to you, do not burn a bridge, because you never know when you're going to have to walk back over it. So thank you for emphasizing that. So the next question will start with Arian, and it is, how important is work-life balance, and how do you make sure that it is a priority?
Somehow I knew that would come to me first. I was saying before we got on the call with everybody, I said, I kind of feel personally attacked by this question, if you know what we do. But I think it comes with any time you're passionate about what you do and you want people to have the best experience, especially in our world. Like, if you have a kiddo that is on the field and smiling, that's the best moment in the world. And sometimes it takes a lot of hours behind the scenes. I think I've always been that person that's all in on no matter what I do. So that tends to catch up with me eventually. If I think back, I decided that pregnant with my second child with a 1-year-old was the perfect time to go to grad school. Not many people would probably say that's the best thing for a work-life balance, but it's kind of what I've always done. So it's definitely something I think I still work on. I have 3 kids, and so they kind of force you to have that balance sometimes, because you want to be present as a parent. So you do, step away and check out to make sure that that mom hat comes on first. But I would say it's definitely a challenge for me ongoing. I think I'm going to listen to the panelists and hopefully learn something along the way as well. But I think that's just the challenge any of us have. If you love what you do, I think that gets blurred between what's professional and what's personal. Especially, I think Ramon could probably speak to that in the nonprofit world. If it doesn't become personal, then it's really hard to be effective at it. And so I think that's where we get into that rub of 8 to 5 doesn't exist, especially in the youth sports world. I don't even know what day it is someday, what day I should be taking an evening off. But I think it's important to set those boundaries early, though. If you get into that and 20 years into your career, you realize now this has become a lifestyle instead of just a necessity out of, maybe it's that season or whatever it may be. So I think that would be my only advice is, if you set those boundaries early, it's a lot easier to maintain a habit than to create a new one.
Thank you, Arian. And then the same question to Ramon, and that's, how important is work-life balance, and how do you make it a priority?
Well, for me, excuse me, that's always been my challenge for me in my life. Was in college, or that I work and study, or my life in the Jesuits, the passionate about the ministry and working with people, and now as a nonprofit administrator, balancing my life as a in the nonprofit, and then living being married, and I don't have any children, so I, at least not that busy in that sense. But the balance, it's always what I try to work on constantly, because it is a reality, and it's a time when you have to sometimes have to say no, and that's probably one of the most challenging skills we have to develop as leaders, is to say no and learn when to stop, because if not, I know I'm a workaholic and I recognize that. And a lot of people tell me that when I was in the Jesuits or with my partner, they call you on it. And that's when I try to develop my active listening skills that I talked about before, and listen to other people and see when they call me on it that, that I have to stop and take time to also take time for your life issues as well.
Thank you, Ramon. And then that brings us to Keith. And it's once again, how important is work-life balance and how do you make it a priority in your life?
Thanks, Drew. Well, it is critical to have a work-life balance. I too, like the other panelists, have struggled with this at different times. And I will say a couple of things in regard to that. One is if you have a work-life balance that's appropriate, it makes you better at your career. If you have other interests and you're able to disengage and you can come back on Monday morning looking forward to whatever that week is going to hold for you, I believe it makes you a better professional. So it's critical to find that. It's difficult to find that in today's world. I'm going to date myself, but when I was in college, we literally had phones on the wall and our Facebook was a piece of paper. It literally was paper and it had everybody's, name and number in it. So today, with the connectivity we have with email and with texting and with messaging and social media and all those things, I find it very hard to disengage from the different elements of my life. And I think that's critical that you find a way to do that. Maybe it's shutting off your phone and blocking out time in your calendar proactively where you're disengaged. Maybe you're working on some aspect of your business, but you're not in the office or wherever your normal, workplace is. It's critical. I'm working on it every day myself. So I think some of the young professionals in this call might have a better approach to it than I do, even as a Gen Xer. But it is absolutely critical, and I do think it makes you a better person if you find a nice balance.
Thank you, Keith. And then that brings us lastly for this question to Elizabeth. And it's once again, how important is work-life balance and how have you made it a priority in your life?
Well, I'll have to say, I envy people who have children and can do this because I don't have children and I still can't do it. So, I raised my 4 siblings after my parents were divorced for about 5 years. And so I knew at a very early age that I did not want children of my own. And so, I guess I consider my life balance the things that I do that are not paying me. So I've always been involved in a lot of organizations where I'm doing free work for, people. I was on the solar car team at Iowa State, and that was basically like a full-time job on top of having a full-time job and going to school full-time. So, it all depends on really what your work-life balance is. To me, it's the nonprofits that I'm involved in. And, my husband has even said in the last few years, you do too much free stuff. And so he set a rule that for every hour I spend doing nonprofit work, I have to give to, being at home or doing something for our household or something like that. And so, this last year during the pandemic, I spent a lot of time helping out at the community gardens and donating all the goods that were being grown to the food banks around town. And so every time I would go do that and I would spend 2 hours at the gardens and then another hour delivering things all around town, I would have to do something at home that weekend that was, 3 hours worth of, cleaning, laundry, gardening at our own house, whatever. And, a balance like that makes my husband happy so that we don't have conflict there. But really, the hardest thing for me is, when you love what you do, it's not work. And I find that with my career and with the things I'm involved with as nonprofits. And so it's a hard line to draw.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And I'm sure all the nonprofits that you work with are very, very thankful for the work and the partnership and collaboration that you provide, especially like we mentioned earlier with the importance of your background and your skills. So that's very nice of you to contribute in that regard. So the next question will start with Ramon, and it's, if you could visit your younger self at the beginning of your career, what would you say to them?
You know, I always look back and say, you know, what if, you know, the what ifs. And I'm glad that I don't ask the what if. I'm grateful where I am right now and how it brought me to that event. But if I look back, I would say, you know, why I didn't study management, why I didn't study business, or because this is where I ended up, you know, in nonprofit business and managing people. So I would say to my younger self, you know, it's like live your passion and go after what you're most passionate about. And that's what I would say, you know, and follow your dreams and what do you want to do. And I think through life, it'll develop and then you'll come to a point like I am 52 now, and I probably am the best job that I ever had. I'm the happiest place.
Thanks, Ramon. I think that's some good advice, and I'm really happy to hear that you thoroughly enjoy what you do now. It's nice to know that you found your niche. And Keith, that brings us to you. And the question is, if you could visit your younger self at the beginning of your career, what would you say to them?
I would say to younger me, go and study abroad during college, because I don't want this to sound like I was this conceited at the time, but I really thought that so many of the elements in college that I had dedicated time to would simply just like fall apart if I left. And I look back at that and say, what an idiot. Like, I can't believe that I didn't, you know, take the opportunity to take advantage of that kind of a just mind altering sort of situation and study abroad for a semester. So obviously, most of the people on the call have already graduated college. Many of you probably did take advantage of that, but definitely when you're young, still take some time to travel and expand your mind and your horizons. I was a small town kid from Iowa, and the first time I went on a plane, went to Washington, D.C., and it changed my life. So travel and do those, you know, new things that you've been dreaming about doing, even when you're young. It's very, very important. I would also say there's a song by the band Mercy Me called Dear Younger Me. And if you want to give yourself good advice, listen to that song by Mercy Me, and I think it'll be good for you.
Just make sure you mute your computer before you do so. Yeah.
Yes, don't turn it on right now.
But thanks, Keith. And I can identify with you. That's one thing I talk about a lot is I never did that. My brother, even though he was in DC, he did it for a semester. I never did a study abroad, and I kind of always look back and wish I had done that. So that's some good advice. So next, the question's to Elizabeth, and it's once again, if you could visit your younger self at the beginning of your career, what would you say to yourself?
Probably along the lines of the opening question about learning and communicating, you know, changing the way I communicate. I would say calm down and listen. You always want to listen, and you always want to approach things in a manner that you don't seem like you're like flying off the handle kind of situation, being dramatic or whatever you want to call it. I was an exchange student in high school, and I would say that definitely changed my life. I have done an extreme amount of travel in previous portions of my career, and I wouldn't trade any of that for anything. It was hard. It was, you know, I spent at least 50% of my time away from my family. And, you know, like I said earlier, if you love what you do, it's not work. And I happen to feel lucky that most of the things I've done have been that way. And so I really wouldn't change anything except for some of the skills that I've learned along the way to get here where I am.
Thanks, Elizabeth. And then that brings us to Arian. Same question. If you could look back and speak to your younger self at the beginning of your career, what would you say?
I think this is one I had to think about. You know, it's nice that we had some of these questions ahead of time because it makes you really kind of think about what did I need early in my career versus, you know, in the middle versus where do I want to sunset in your career, kind of those kind of reflection points. I think the first one that came to me was to trust yourself. You know, when you're learning and you're trying to absorb as much as you can from others around you, there comes a time when you do have to trust your gut and trust yourself and know, you know, strengths got you to where you are. And you may have a feeling about either a job or a town that, like he said, if you travel and you end up finding a place that you feel more at home, like trust that feeling and know that the decisions that you make are your decisions. I think early on, I was very concerned about what would the world think if I did A, B, and C, as opposed to just doing A, B, or C because it's what I wanted to do or what, you know, kind of that gut feeling was. So I think that's the biggest one for me. And then I think that goes into just being confident. You know, once you know yourself and you know what you want to do, I think that confidence maybe comes a little more naturally. But again, I think I said earlier, I was naturally an introvert. And so to be in the position I am now, I had to trust in myself to know that you don't always have to be that super talkative and super outgoing individual to do the job that you want to do. You just may do it differently. So it's that, you know, confidence and trust in yourself, I think. And then that goes also to not settling. You know, you, as you are starting in a career, you may try a job that you don't know until you get in that that's maybe not the job. But I think he said the same thing, you know, as you change your career and change your path completely, to not settle for a position that you're in, knowing that there's something else out there for you. So I think those are the three things that I would say to myself early on anyway.
So one thing I wanted to do as well, and I'll ask another question so you can kind of think about this and then jump in if you would like. Just feel free to unmute yourself after this question if you'd like. But, you know, we had a lot of thought-provoking questions from the group. So like I said, I'm going to ask one more question. And then after that, if you wanted to follow up on any other questions or try to get more information from any of the panelists regarding it, something they said, please do feel free to do so after this question. And the question is from Rachel Schott, and it's, what impresses you when hiring someone? What characteristics do you typically look for in a candidate to join your team? And we'll start with Elizabeth.
You know, being in the engineering field, of course, we don't really like take cold call interviews from just anyone off the street. You have to have some sort of education to really be able to apply for a position within what we do as engineers. But seeing that somebody has experience in other stuff like organizations than just being a workaholic or only focusing on engineering, knowing that they can, you know, our job, you can sit behind your computer and run all the calcs and do all the drainage studies and do all the grading plans you want. But to be successful as an engineer, you need to be able to communicate with clients, you need to be able to sell your services to clients. And that all stems back to being comfortable with communicating. And so, you know, when they're interviewing with us, if they are super shy and tripping over all their words, we understand that people are nervous during those kinds of times, but hopefully if they can control that in some manner, we can see that they're going to get to it and be able to be communicators and, you know, grow in their career. If you only want to sit behind your computer and do all the design stuff, that kind of stops you from being able to move into like a management type role in this industry. And so those are the kinds of things that I look for when we're interviewing people.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And Arian, that brings us to you. And again, it's, what impresses you when hiring someone, and what characteristics do you look for when hiring someone to join your team?
Yeah, we've actually done quite a bit of this as we have been working on staffing our sportsplex. You know, interview for a variety of different positions. And I think as a hiring manager, when you're asking certain questions to a candidate, you kind of have an idea of what answers you're kind of expecting. I think the candidates that I get most excited about are when I get answers that are completely out of the box of where I thought that question may go. I mean, ultimately, when we make those hires, those are the people that we bring onto the team, because it for me, it makes sure that we have somebody that's going to add to our team, not just assimilate into our team, but add to the team that's going to think differently. And so when they come back with an answer that I go, I didn't even think that that's where that question might go, then that's a point for me that I know that, all right, this candidate is different than, maybe the 17 other that answered it the exact same way. And that's kind of that separation point for me.
Thanks, Arian. And that brings us to Ramon. Same question. What are some of the traits or qualities that you look for when hiring someone, and what are those things that can set people apart?
For me, when I read like a, a resume or somebody that sent me a letter, one of the key things that I look for is this person had the skills, even if they don't have the experience, because that's what a lot of people think. You could have all the education and all these little things, but if you don't emphasize on your skills and I would say like the assets that you will bring, that will set you apart right away. And then at the interview part, then I'll check about those skills and communication and team working, wanting to do the teamwork. So I think when I start hiring people, those are the key things that I look for. That is this person have the skills because they're going to grow in the job. So I know that even though they may not have the education part or those kind of things, at least that person can learn in the job. And I like those because those are the ones that are really very motivated, and they do their best they can be because they want to learn and they want to grow. So that's for the beginning. If you're starting to look for jobs, that's how you have to sell yourself, at something different. And when I read resumes, I prefer those that are more skill based than just the traditional historical ones.
Thanks, Ramon. And then Keith, that brings us to you. And that again, the question is, what are some traits or characteristics you look for when hiring people, and what advice would you give folks on this call as far as how to set yourself apart in that regard?
Yeah, well, this relates to what Elizabeth, Arian, and Ramon have all said, but I would say when in answering that question, to be real, to be sincere, and don't try to be something that you're not. So yes, you need to highlight your skills, your background, your abilities, but also I think it's important to kind of just be honest with who you are and what you enjoy doing, what you've enjoyed doing in the past. Because if you create an image of the person you think they want to hire, and then you go to work every day after being hired and you're not that person, it doesn't help you or that hiring manager or the organization. So being as honest as possible about what you enjoy, where your skills are, I think is critical, because if you don't get that job that you were honest at, but you get the next one that is a perfect fit, it's going to be far better for you and the organization you get hired by.
Thank you. And then I did want to make sure that as I had said before I asked that question, real quick, is there anyone on the event or on the attendee list that wants to ask a follow-up question? If so, feel free to jump off mute. We'll wait here a little bit and see if anyone does have a question that they want to ask that they may not have put in the chat box.
Drew, I did have one question that came directly to me, and that is, what could Impact CB do or provide to young professionals to build a stronger workforce in our community?
And I believe we were on Arian.
There we go. If I can get it to unmute there. I don't know if you saw my eyebrows. I'm like, that is a great question. You always say, what do you wish you had, or what, if you're looking for candidates, what do you wish that they had exposed themselves to? I think it's just those experiences. And I think Impact has changed. I was involved in Impact. I was on the board a few years ago. And I think we've seen that evolution of what the group is doing as a whole, as opposed to just the social events. It's become more of lunch and learns. It's become more, exposure to other organizations or other kind of workplaces that you may not have previously had in a traditional networking environment. kind of those behind the scenes looks. I think for any candidate or anybody that, as you're looking to hire the best and, work with the best, I think the most well-rounded people are those people. And so if Impact can continue to, just that exposure of what does our community have to offer, or what does surrounding communities do differently that our young leaders can help bring that change to the community. I think all of those new experiences, I think would benefit all of us.
Thanks, Arian. And that brings us to Ramon, and it's what could Impact do to try to positively impact the workforce here in Council Bluffs and Potawatomi County?
Do you mean the program or the participants?
Both the program and participants.
Okay, I think with the with the program, I think a mentorship program or something, creating that you can connect these young people that are entering career worlds and pair them up, with a mentor. If they want to be a nonprofit administrator or a certain career, that could be a good thing, so they can, learn, for the people that have the experience. And I think for the participants, I think the impact, it's good to start volunteering, especially in the nonprofits as board members. Start learning how to be part of the community and kind of bring their skills, also to give back their skills to the community. And that will be a great program to have, that they have that experience. And that always look good for your resume as well, because a lot of us look also their volunteer, how they balance their work and life, and how do they give back. I think that would be a great idea to promote that among the Impact CB participants.
Thank you, Ramon. And that brings us to Keith. And again, that's what can Impact CB as a program or as its participants do to positively impact the workforce throughout Potawatomi County and Council Bluffs?
I think the program has made great strides, as has already been mentioned. So I would speak to the participants, and I would say, really look at the incredible opportunity that we all have living in this community. And if you're from this community, recognize that this isn't your grandparents' Council Bluffs. I mean, the things that are going on with Arian's organization out there, with what Kara is doing at Career Advantage, with the college and its growth, with the chamber and its the redesign of the 100 block and Main Street, and just all the things happening in our community that are so exciting. I think Council Bluffs is a fantastic opportunity because it's a small enough city that you can come in and make an impact very quickly if you're dedicated and you do volunteer and you get involved. And so I would tell Impact members, go back to your friends that maybe have left town, or people you knew in college that would be a great fit for Council Bluffs, and tell them all that, the technology companies we have here and across the river in Omaha, and the things that we have here. Our quality of life, I think, is just fantastic. There's no way I would want to live full time in a city with 2-hour traffic both ways to commute. I'd much rather be in a town where I can get to know people and know the mayor and know the superintendent of schools. We have incredible opportunities here. And also I will mention, we have a great voice with politics, and thank you to Drew for your connection with our state politics. I'm amazed that all the presidential candidates show up here when the elections come around, and you can literally meet our candidates face to face because of our unique position here in Iowa. So I'm excited about what we have, and I think others should be as well, and communicate that to other young professionals that would really thrive here.
Thank you, Keith. And you make some really good points with some of the great things that are going on here throughout the community in a variety of different areas and a variety of different sectors. Elizabeth, that brings us to you. And what do you think Impact CB can do to positively impact the Council Bluffs and Potawatomi County workforce?
Well, I feel like to impact it for me and my needs personally, we need a piece of impact to get to a younger age, like the high school level. I've been working with Iowa Western Community College over the last couple of years to help them re-implement the civil engineering technology program that they had several years ago and stopped doing. And we are on such a shortage of that kind of workforce here that I felt like we needed to go to the source to help them realize what a great need there is for that. And now that they've realized that, we need to start spreading the word to the younger age students that still have the opportunity, or even people who are wanting to start a new career. You know, to get into the engineering or surveying side of things, we prefer that you have some sort of experience or education that will help back that up. And that's really just because our industry has gotten so technical with all of the things that we use as tools to do our work. And so, you know, using Kara's organization to get to the high school students, I think is a great partner piece where we could, you know, use them to get to community. You don't need to go get a 4-year degree or a master's degree. Go get some sort of degree from any tech school that shows us that you have an interest and the willing ability to learn, and that you know are just generally interested in the field. We'll train you, but we've struggled for years. Every place I've worked has struggled at least for the last 5 to 7 years with this issue. And I hope that the new program at Iowa Western will help over the next few years gain us some people to be able to get in that pool for workforce.
Well, thank you, Elizabeth. We appreciate that. And do know too that we have within our workforce development initiative within the Council Bluffs area chamber, we have some resources and also some knowledge and connections and serving as a conduit to be able to assist with that as well, getting into the high schools, getting into the community colleges. It sounds like you have a pretty good route in there as well. But, you know, both of the superintendents were on this call as well. They're both doing great work in their CTE programs and others as well. So yeah, please do follow up with us, and we'd love to get you connected to Alicia on our team and talk a little bit about if there's ways we could partner on some of the efforts that you're initiating and moving forward. So with that actually brings us, we're a little bit past time. I apologize, but we really do appreciate and thank our panelists. You guys had a lot of really good insight, and we appreciate all of our attendees who joined us today as well. This is just another great resource that's being brought to bear within Impact CB, and we thank Sarah Beth for her work and leadership within Impact CB. And with that, we will end the event and have a very nice rest of the day, and thanks for your support of the Council Bluffs Area Chamber.
Yep, and if you get additional questions from people afterwards, you know, just email those out. I'm sure we're all willing to give further advice that past what we've done here.
Absolutely, that's very appreciated. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.